It was almost the same recipe as the Bulls game, but the Raptors win against the Orlando Magic and dominate doing so for the most part. Let's go to the film room. It was a tale of two halves for Immanuel Quickley. The first half, he was 2 of 9 from the field, and it felt like he couldn't get to his spots when it came to driving to the basket, like here, where in transition just gets really stopped by Cole Anthony. That could be called a foul, but ultimately the refs aren't going to give that all the time. But it felt like even the easiest shots weren't going in for Quick, especially in that middle spot. And I mentioned this on Twitter, but IQ this season is struggling on the interior. He's shooting about 46% in the paint and then 52% in the restricted area. And so those aren't numbers. Those are numbers that need to improve. Those just aren't good enough when it comes to a starting point guard and a guy who needs to pressure the rim. I think ultimately that's going to be the next step for Quick. He's obviously a great shooter, number one pull-up shooter in the NBA statistically. But I think in order to grow his game as an offensive weapon, you need to be able to pressure the rim. You need to be able to put pressure on the defense in the paint as well. And I thought in the second half he did that. We'll get to that in a sec. A big part of Quick's game is playing with a big man, and I think Jakob Poeltl just makes his life so much easier with these screens to open up opportunities for him. And in transition, instead of being the on-ball player pushing it up, I like him filling the lane in transition to create space and knock down these catch-and-shoot looks. Good job by Quick here to push the pace and do it against a not set Magic defense, just attacks the basket and then makes the and one here. And those type of shots are important because it actually opens up the rest of his game. You know, Magic are pressing with the shot clock winding down. He just goes all the way and then settles into a floater. Excellent work there to end the third quarter for Quick. Good job evading the press by the Magic and then flowing into a flare screen with Jakob that flows into a pick and roll. And he just uses it to get in the teeth of the defense and try to get that floater. Ultimately, that could be a foul call, but I like the initiative there. And also, it created a lane for him with that pick and roll opportunity with Jakob. Another pick and roll opportunity with Jakob Poeltl. He uses it, gets the switch on Wendell Carter Jr., much slower player, gets him off his spot, and then attacks. Again, could have been called for a foul, wasn't, but ultimately still knocked down that floater. Really good job from Quick there. Same idea here, gets the switch on Wendell Carter, attacks going left, and settles into a crazy shot. So look, things were rolling, right? Compare that to the first half where none of his floaters were falling, none of those shots at the basket were dropping, and in the second half, all of these shots were dropping. This was a quality that he had in New York. His floater ability was actually one of his best offensive talents. It was the thing that piqued my interest the most because obviously he's a great three-point shooter, but the fact that he could attack a tilted defense and settle for floaters meant that there was more to his game, that he could eventually become a 3-level scorer. We haven't seen that so far, and I think part of that is injuries, part of that is the fact that he's still getting assimilated with becoming, a starting point guard in this league. But the second half is the version of Immanuel Quickley that the Raptors signed. The first half, not so much. And I think all of those aspects, the scoring ability, putting pressure on defenses, actually opens up his playmaking too. So defenses are scramming now. They're trying to chase after him off the ball. He uses it, attacks a seam in the defense, finds Jonathan Mobo on the cut. Beautiful work there. And then later in the game, pick and roll with Jakob. They send 2 to the ball because of the offensive firepower, and he creates an open shot for Jakob Poeltl. And so Immanuel Quickley was awesome in this game. Really great job dissecting Orlando's defense, putting pressure on the defense with his floater game, getting into the teeth of it, inside the paint to create opportunities for his teammates, inside the paint to get opportunities for himself. And it was a tale of two halves for him, right? 2 of 9 to start in the first half, and then he finished the game 8 of 19. Really impressive work in that second half, especially in that third quarter, to put the Raptors up big. Generally, the Raptors blew a lead here. They were up 19 at one point and lost it, much like the Chicago Bulls game. It just felt like, oh my God, again, they're going to do the ethical tank one more time, one more for the road. And no, it didn't happen. Almost did, though. Franz Wagner had a wide open layup and just blew it. It actually looked like they gave him the layup. I was like, what is going on here? But nonetheless, the Raptors pulled it out. Big part of that was Immanuel Quickley, who had a really good game. And you could see him getting into rhythm. He's finally getting consistent run, finally playing. not having to deal with injuries here and there. And so it's really helped his ability to just get consistent run, feel a rhythm. And I remember when we were at the game, I was at the last game at home. I believe it was against Boston. And they asked him post game, like, "Hey, man, like, does it feel like you're getting into rhythm?" And he's like, "Yeah, it just feels like I'm healthy again," And that's a huge part of this. Like when guys are coming back from injury, sometimes it's a matter of getting their legs under them as much as it is feeling confident about their own bodies and their ability to compete in games. And so, Quick going from that hip injury that he had to the elbow injury to the hip again to the groin. It's just a lot of stuff to deal with in a season. And so now that he has got a consistent opportunity to play, I think it's just benefited him. It's just worked to his advantage. And this is the type of IQ that the Raptors need. Really, it really is. And I just think he fits so well with Scotty. He fits incredibly well with Brandon Ingram eventually. I think he fits well with a lot of teams. He's a guy who's malleable, can kind of be put into multiple different positions, play off of the ball, a guy who I think can really excel off of the ball for this Raptors team, but also be able to do some things on the ball and carry the load on that end a little bit. And he's developing that side of it. So that's what's exciting. It's like, how much more can he become an on-ball player for the Raptors, especially because his pull-up shooting has been great. His catch-and-shoot numbers have not been the greatest, but his pull-up shooting has been superb this season. So growing that aspect is a huge part of the future for the Toronto Raptors. And so that should give you more confidence in what they're building. The fact that IQ is having good games. Another guy that should is RJ Barrett. RJ has been awesome. Samson had a tweet earlier, shout out to Samson, where it was like, it's been his first 80 games as a Raptor, including last season, and he's basically been a 24-4-4 guy with like 58% true shooting. Don't have the numbers on me. Don't really care. The real truth is that RJ Barrett has been awesome, and he was awesome again tonight. And I think much like IQ, where having Jakob Poeltl is important to him as a screener, RJ and Jakob have developed a really, really potent chemistry. Call back the Celtics game in December when it went to, I believe it was double overtime or overtime, and it was RJ and Jakob dissecting them. But there's been so many moments this season where RJ and Jakob showed off their chemistry together, and it's become one. It's become like second nature to them. So I wanted to just break down some of the plays between the two tonight as well. So it's a pin down for RJ, and he flows into a pick and roll with Jakob, and he just finds him there. Again, it's intuition between these two at this point. More intuition here in the second half. Raptors try to run a pick and roll between them, and then a great job using the Gortat screen to find Jakob inside. That's just great chemistry, great understanding of what each player likes to do. RJ's driving game creates so many opportunities for Jakob as well, because the defense always has to send help, and he does a great job of throwing down these pocket passes to Jakob. And so their connection has been great. It really has been awesome to watch. And I think overall you can see with what Immanuel Quickley does and what RJ Barrett does, how freaking important Jakob Poeltl is to this team. And so in the last recap, when I say, look, man, the Raptors subbed off Jakob and the game just fell. I think it was like a 12 or 13 point lead with 7 minutes left against the Bulls, and they just completely collapse. The Raptors need Jakob Poeltl. He's a pretty important player. And I'm going to keep beating that drum because it's contract extension time soon, eventually for this summer. Look, they will have opportunities to get other centers in the rotation, but for now, he is essential to the development and making life easier for these guys, including Scotty Barnes. So yeah, that's basically the gist of it. Overall, the game was pretty, I would say, uneventful for the most part. The Raptors took care of business through three and a half quarters. Again, IQ and RJ did a great job. Jakob Poeltl had a really great game, super impactful on this one. The Magic just are brutal offensively. Woof. And I don't think this is anything new. I'm sure many Magic fans know this. There's obviously high expectations for this team. They've dealt with tons of injuries too, between Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero, and now Jalen Suggs, who's out indefinitely. Even Mo Wagner, who's out for the season, I believe. And so they've dealt with their fair share of injuries too. But man, is it tough for this team right now offensively. You can really pack the paint against them because they're having an abhorrent three-point shooting season. And so the Raptors did a great job of negating their drives, forcing them into situations where, like, they just were dared to shoot. And the Magic weren't capable of knocking down those shots. They made a run in that fourth quarter just because I think the Raptors defense slipped a little bit and their offense went into ISO mode and all that type of stuff. And I think that's sort of the lack of execution from the Raptors, which I broke down in that Chicago Bulls recap. But for the Magic side of things, I think the Raptors defense fell asleep a little bit in that fourth quarter. It allowed them to get into the paint. It allowed them to get to the free throw line, and it helped Orlando get back into this game. That's their MO. If that's not working, if there's a team that can match them in size and at length and athleticism, especially at the rim, it's kind of hard. And so I'm curious to see how that'll look in the playoffs. Man, that's tough. Tough. They really miss Jalen Suggs. Like his ball handling is a really key part to this whole thing, even though like not necessarily the most consistent shooter, but generally a really big part of them offensively. And then how do you work Franz and Paolo together? How do you kind of blend those two guys together and make it work offensively? Because I think defensively, both of them are really good and they have a great defensive nucleus. Just how are you going to make that thing work offensively? Going to be interesting. You know, the Raptors also are in a situation where we'll see how that looks next offensively when Brandon Ingram comes back. There was a Twitter video I saw of them. I believe it was a Twitter guy breaking down basically Paolo and Franz and some of the differences and why it's not necessarily working sometimes. And I'm curious to see how the Raptors incorporate BI and Scotty next to each other. There's tons of opportunities for them to thrive, but there's also opportunities for them to clash in certain ways. And so how does the Raptors coaching staff maximize those things? I think that's something that, you got to kind of keep in mind moving forward into next season. But those are next season problems, folks. That's all I got for y'all. We got the Magic again on Tuesday. See how that one goes. Maybe the Raptors don't blow a lead. Maybe they don't have a lead in the first place to blow. We'll see. Folks, as always, subscribe to the Raptors Republic YouTube channel. Appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. See you guys next time. Peace out.